I've been shooting more actively this past year, and to be honest, I really enjoy doing it. There have been times where I didn't want to pick up the camera because I just didn't feel motivated enough, but along the way I learned a few things that helped me rekindle my joy into photography. And spoiler alert, it's not buying new camera gear. Let me give you 5 tips on how you can find joy again in your photography. If you are a professional photographer, then some days can feel a little bit dull because it feels like it's just the same gig as last week's. Or if you're a hobby photographer and you have a camera laying around, but you just don't find the motivation to shoot, then these 5 tips are for you. Be sure to stick around because there might be an extra bonus tip in this video. Let's start with tip number 1. Following the light has probably been the best thing for me as a photographer. Sometimes the sun can shed a single stroke of light on a normal object and suddenly it doesn't seem so normal anymore. Let's take a look at some shots that I took last month. The sun was getting up and hit directly in the windows, which resulted in these beams of light. You can manipulate your camera, of course, to make everything look visible, but then the light in the windows might be massively overexposed. Instead, I try to embrace what I have, and trying to expose for those highlights makes everyone look like a silhouette. But it can create such a beautiful image, and suddenly your normal business picture is more kind of artsy and way more interesting. I don't know when or where this started to change for me, but now I'm always looking for those streaks of light in my photography. Now everywhere I go I see it, and it motivates me even more to go out and shoot. Even it's with my iPhone, it's always a beautiful thing to stand still and take a picture of a moment that will last a lifetime on your hard drive. For those who have been following me the last year, have noticed that I sometimes go out on the street to practice street photography. Taking a camera in your hand and visiting a place just to take photographs is so much fun. Suddenly the world is your playground and it does something therapeutic to me. I tend to forget everything for a couple of hours about work or other life-related stresses. Secondly, you're practicing your photography in a playful way, and having fun is probably the best way to learn something. And then lastly, there's no pressure of clients, there are no deadlines, you can just do whatever you want. Just you, the camera, and something in front of you that you want to photograph. Either you love it or either you think it's an incredible waste of money and time, but film photography is something that excites me so much. I may be influenced here by other photographers on YouTube or on Instagram, but still, taking a film camera with me makes me think more about the picture that I'm going to take. Also, not knowing what you're going to get is such a thrilling feeling, and I'm always looking forward to those negatives or the film scans of the lab. Shooting on film gives me a platform to embrace the slowness of it all, like shooting on the Mamiya for example. Also, there are different rolls of film that have different kinds of effects on your photos, and not to mention the quirky but very cool looking cameras that are out there. If you love the look of film but you don't want to spend the extra time and money, then there's a different way to do this. And this brings me to my next topic. By owning a Fuji X-T3, I discovered the world of Fujifilm Recipes. These are literally settings for your camera to make your pictures look like they were shot on film, but it's digital. You have, for example, a recipe for Portra 400, Kodak Gold 200, Cinestill 800, the list goes on, and it's super fun to experiment with all of these. What you have to do is get a Fujifilm camera, maybe get an older second-hand version that's not incredibly overpriced, install the Fuji X Weekly app and scroll for a recipe that's appealing to you. Next, you can insert these settings and even save them on the custom slots of your camera. The best thing about this is that these are JPEGs, which means no more editing later into Lightroom. This saves you tons of time and you can import the pictures easily to your mobile phone. My favorite preset of the moment is a Kodachrome recipe or the Superia 1600. Number 5 is trying different techniques. If you feel bored with your photography skill set, then it might be a good idea to invest some time in learning new techniques instead of buying a new lens or camera body. For example, on the same shoot that I was talking about earlier, I had some extra time and I wanted to experiment with the slow shutter technique. For example, on the same shoot I was talking about earlier, I had some extra time and I wanted to use that time to experiment with a new technique that I saw that was quite trending on Instagram, which is the slow shutter technique. What you have to do for this is use a slow shutter like 1/15, and you'll see that the image is very bright, so you have to adjust it by bringing the aperture up. Now just take a picture of something that's moving, for example someone that's walking by, or you can move the camera a tiny bit by yourself. There are tons of other YouTube tutorials out there, and I would recommend you that you pour some time into each individual technique. And if you do this regularly, then your skill set and your knowledge will be massively bigger. Now, another tip that might be incredibly fun for you to experiment with are filters. I've seen amazing shots by other photographers, like this starburst shot for example, and to have this effect you need to own a filter. I only use bloom filters and these are incredibly fun to shoot with. These filters basically give a washed out look to your highlights and therefore your pictures are more vintage looking. I'm not using it on all of my projects, of course. The more professional ones don't really appreciate it. They want those sharp and contrasty pictures. But there are tons of other filters out there. You have split diopters, infrared, linear and prism effects. And all the coolest ones, in my opinion, are to be found on Prism Lens effects. So I think I gave you some material to work with to get started on shooting. If you have any other recommendations, please leave them in the comments. I'd like to see them. If you made it to this point, then maybe you can watch another video of mine. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see each other in the next video. Bye bye.